That's absolutely fine. So that's really it for the introductions. In terms of the housekeeping for the event. So as I say, I'm now delighted to hand you over to Megan Carnes, who's the chair and former CEO of Hoarding UK and who brings a wealth of experience to this important topic. So over to you, Megan.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. We have an hour, so I'm going to sort of get to it if that's okay. I'm just going to flag that on Saturday evening, my internet hub died. I have a fob and two phones. If anything were to happen to my internet connection, I'm not largely the host, so luckily Advocacy Project is hosting. But if anything happens, just hang on a second. Okay, so I'll just change over. We've been working on resolving it, but I couldn't get it resolved. So we'll do our best. I don't expect any issues. I haven't had any thus far. I will now share slides. Hello. Okay, so I'm just going to put, what I do is I tell you what I'm doing so you know what I'm doing. I like to see you when I'm sharing so that I can see if there's any questions. So I'm just getting that shared. Great. Video panel. Great. Now, if anything blocks the screen, let me know, please. Okay. So, hi, I'm Megan Carnes. I am the founder, former CEO, and now chair of Hoarding UK. We are the UK national charity supporting people who are impacted by hoarding behavior, as well as family, friends, and professionals. You're going to see the slide, but don't wait for it. I understand the sort of standard model of this. Oops, sorry. Somebody's not muted. It's okay.
Right. So, I'll try again. I've picked in a bit.
Sorry, just muting some people. Not to silence you, I want you to talk. So don't wait for this slide if you have questions. Also to say that I'm not going to talk for 40 minutes and then have you ask questions. I'm going to do little pieces. So I'm going to introduce hoarding and what it is, and then I'll ask you for questions. And that's where the slides come to life. So please do join in. I do a lot. I am an activist. This is an activist piece of work. I'm a professional advocate. I started in mental health to make organizational systemic change. I'm a therapist and a supervisor, and I do a lot of training. The reason I say that to you is because this all matters here today. We're not here to sort of look only at the mental health aspect of hoarding or only at the legal side or only at, it's a holistic view. In that context, I'm going to introduce to the current framing of hoarding behavior, which is hoarding disorder. Everyone is on a spectrum of things, okay? So not everyone is a person who hoards. Not everyone is a person on the right whose home is overwhelmed with belongings, but everyone has some things. So we have people who save things, collect things, clutter things, and then potentially move into hoarding. I'm going to try not to move too much. That'll make the bandwidth stop. On the other side of the spectrum, we have a person who's very potentially minimalist, very organized, very tidy, very active in cleaning and changing things to make them cleaner, tidier, more perfectly aligned. That person on the far left may have what we would call obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD. If I bring in an acronym, letters standing for words meaning other things, and I don't explain it and you don't know what it is, please just ask. There are so many. The reason I bring that in is because that person on the left side of the spectrum and the person on the right side of the spectrum are all dealing with obsessive compulsive spectrum disorders. So the hoarding falls on the OCD spectrum, and I'll explain that more fully. So in 2008, when I started this and started to go talk about it, I'd say, is hoarding a lifestyle choice or a psychological issue? And I would always get the answer, lifestyle choice. And I'm going to say still we're dealing with this distortion in thinking. In 2013 in the US and 2018 in the International Classification of Diseases, which is the World Health Organization's manual, hoarding disorder was classified as a unique independent mental health issue. I bring in the DSM because many of the UK research projects, et cetera, are based on the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. No one can tell me why. I don't read you the slides, I tell you what they say. Okay, you will have a copy of the slides. I will send a PDF to Advocacy Project, it'll be available. So basically what the international classification says is that a person who hoards is either actively acquiring at a very fast pace or a pace that's faster than their ability to discard. Okay. That the difficulty in discarding is based on a couple of things. It's actually more complex than that, but the idea that the item has value, that I need to do something with it, that it's going to grow in value, that I'm going to contaminate the universe if I throw away this piece of plastic. But more importantly, it's because of the distress caused when trying to let go of it. And I always highlight that word distress because it's not very commonly indicated in clinical criteria. And it doesn't say this person is slightly upset. It doesn't say this person is anxious. It says this person moves into distress. And as a person who's a mental health activist, I'd like to restate something I state, which is that distress is physically experienced. The body goes into sort of a shock. That shock permeates the whole system bodily, but also impacts the mind, the brain, the ability to make decisions. So this thing that is happening psychologically triggers a biological response of distress. And I want to say that because it's not often recognized or valued how difficult this is. Because of the repetitive nature of it, I feel bad. I pick up the book, I pick up the DVD, I pick up the shoes. I feel better. I bring it home. I put it down. The house is overwhelmed. I feel worse. I decide to let go of something. I try to do that. The distress overwhelms. I cannot do that. And I feel bad. That obsessive compulsive cycle of repetitiveness is very evident in this, but not very sort of considered when dealing with this. Because of this repetitive pattern of sort of self-soothing, taking away the intrusive thought, the home becomes unusable in its intended purpose. In this picture, there are two people. I want to leave the picture there because often the person on the right is not seen. The reason I put this picture in is to say this couple is not in distress at this moment. This couple is in their. It is we say to them, oh, that cowbot, you're right. You just get rid of it. You're not using it. Let's just use that, or maybe we can use that to put some stuff in. Let's do that. That the purpose of avoidance of not being able to let go of that item. Oops, I'm getting the unstable connection. No way. I got the unstable connection, so I stopped talking. That's the news. Just let me know if I'm not. Just let me know if I'm not back. So basically, it is our health that is a part of what causes the distress. They say the level of
Right, I think we've lost Megan completely there. But I'm assuming that if we give it a sec, she'll re-emerge.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. She did say that if that happened, she would come back in. So thanks everyone for being patient. Hopefully she'll be back in a second.
Oh, it looks like she's coming back on. No, that was a false alarm there.
No, she's there. We just can't hear her.
I'm just muted. I'm just muted.
All right.
Okay.
Hi.
Sorry about that. I've switched devices. Sorry, go ahead. Question, Debbie? No. Okay.
No, I accidentally left and then came back. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. Not a problem. I'm just going to go back to the slides, then I'm going to open it up for discussion. So, sorry, I just got to share them again. Fraza. Okay. Don't worry about these things. It's just technology and it doesn't stress. So I'll just come back as soon as I can. As you can see, that didn't take long. All right. So they say level of insights vary, low, medium, and high. But a rhetorical question that I will ask now that we will discuss in a minute or so is who here has had a person who hoards come to them and say, I have an issue with hoarding and I want help. Okay. I feel like we don't ask that question enough, that we sort of act as if people who hoard are coming to us and saying we want help, instead of acknowledging that often people who hoard are being discovered, identified, tenancy checks, gas checks, neighbors' complaints. So we don't set up a structure that allows the resistance we might encounter as we begin a process of support. We also very rarely have programs of support. I want to be clear that Hoarding UK does not consider decluttering a psychological intervention. It is a topical, superficial solution. We work in a psychologically trauma-informed way, and I'll talk a bit about that. The APA, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, people say people are indecisive, perfectionists, procrastinate, they're disorganized, they're distractible. Well, that's anxiety disorders. That's all anxiety disorders. So this person is someone who is unable to make a decision, potentially because they have to make a perfect decision. They say procrastination. All of these words are very judgmental. I'm just going to highlight that. But if we use procrastination, we are disregarding the avoidant behavior as a result of the obsessive compulsive cycle. Okay. So I feel bad. I pick it up to let it go. I become overwhelmed. I put it down to feel better. That is a cycle. That is not procrastination. Disorganization, I feel, is an untrue representation. We don't work to tidy, fold, clear. We don't do those things. If we are working with a person, we are having them do that. Somebody's not needed. And if you're supporting a person to go through that process, you're actually going to see overthinking, over-organizing. Do all red shoes go together, or do red heels and red trainers go in different places? Do DVDs go in year? Do they go in genre? Do they go in title? How do they go? So the process of organizing is over-organizing. And distractible for that distress. So basically anybody who's going to feel bad when they do something doesn't want to do it. And also when we go into the pile to begin a process, every item has a story, has a meaning, which would be true of everything that is in front of me, as it would in front of you. So that slows down the process. It is in the brain and it is in the body. So if you have OCD or hoarding in your family, you're more likely to have hoarding as a triggered response to an incident. I would frame that incident in a trauma frame. A consultant psychiatrist would not agree with me because they wouldn't meet the criteria necessarily. But for this person, the event that takes them into hoard is traumatic. It is comorbid. It goes alongside everything else. So if we have bereavement and hoarding, can we make a referral into the bereavement service? If we have OCD and hoarding, can we make a referral into the OCD pathway? What happens is when the hoard comes into our frame, we ignore everything in a way but the belongings. And we know that something causes it. Now, in a trauma-informed way, we're not saying, hey, what caused this? We're listening for those clues. We're holding that it's there. We're validating that it's a reason to be in this situation. And I just like this slide because I'm a trainer and I do mental health awareness training. And one of my frustrations is that we say, oh, this person has OCD or depression or anxiety or. And I like this slide because it sort of shows that there's a lot of crossover between disorder. And in my experience as a counselor, anxiety is present in many, many other issues. Do you know what I mean? So we want to sort of say this is OCD spectrum, but there also may be autism. There also may be depression. There also may be psychosis. Bipolar mania is a big trigger for acquiring, in my experience. Yes. So we're not just looking in this one little thing like, oh, this is OCD spectrum. Everyone is not a person who hoards, but every type of person can be. So it's not age, gender, tenure, educational, financial. These things do not matter in hoarding. They say 2 to 5% of the population. That's a statistic that's pulled from nowhere in my view, because we don't have a box that says hoarding behavior in our databases, which is one layer of discriminatory practice. So like BAME, learning difficulties, physical disabilities, women, this group of people is not counted. If it is 2% of the population, which is the low end of that spectrum, OCD, as we commonly know it is 1.2%. So we're dealing with a psychological issue that's almost double the context that we have about OCD. And the question we'll talk about today, because this is about what are we going to do to change this, is where's the support? So where's the mental health support for hoarding? We know it runs in families. We know there's biological evidence. We know that there's a trigger. We're not searching for that. We're listening for it. How do we hold that? And we know that this problem grows on itself. So the more I become incapable of dealing with this, the more impacted the space gets. I see that there's a chat. I will address that in a minute. That's the minute. So any questions about that? I just want to look at the chat and see what was asked or said, or so I'm not ignoring it. Yes, thank you, Nat. I wanted to say that actually this needs to be a safe space for people to talk about hoarding, because many people here will be personally impacted, and I like that to be safe. So when we talk about confidentiality, if we're talking about our clients, we're being mindful, but also recognizing that this is a problem that many people are suffering with in silence. So I'm just reading this. I'm hoping everyone can see it. Yes. Well, that's hoarding. The police accidentally came upon us, which is exactly what I said. Your mom didn't say I need help. So let's start there. Anybody here have someone come to them and say, I'm a person who hoards and I want your help?
And just the one.
Just the one. And I'm going to suggest, Debbie, that that person didn't necessarily happen to look for help because of no reason. So something usually is happening in the background, like that neighbor complaint, like that landlord gas check. So it's often still, even though the person is saying, I want help, it is still someone who is being kind of pushed. Okay. I just want to let you know that Hoarding UK has 3 virtual support groups. I don't know the dates and times. I just show up. I facilitate all of them. In the last group of what we call Place in the Space, there were 18 attendees, and your people, anyone who is in dealing with this issue is welcome to attend. 18 people, 18 individuals said, they say we don't want help. We are all here because we want help. There is no help. Because we say help is taking the stuff out of the house. Let's make it tidy. Let's clear. We don't do that with addiction. We don't say to a person who has alcohol addiction, crash, boom, bottle broken on the floor, I'll just tidy that up. Your addiction is sorted. We don't say that. But in hoarding, we say, if you just let us tidy the space, and then we'll help you. And once we tidy the space, we leave people alone. Hoarding UK has delivered in Greater London, and I'm personally doing a project outside of London with a local authority where we work with people over longer periods. So the program that I developed works with people over the course of a year in a psychological and practical way. In the pilot that we're doing, we are also launching 6 support groups that are co-facilitated. There is no evidence, as much as I'm an activist. Peer-led is everything I do, but there's no evidence that peer-led support groups help people who hoard. So we develop a co-facilitated model. There's a person who hoards next to a person who has, I'm not an expert, I'm an activist, expertise, understanding, psychologically trauma-informed, systemically informed, because you have to know where to go in this to get help. Yes, so we're not looking at a short-term solution in our models, and we are looking at integrated change. The pilot that I'm doing, which is sort of, I'm not going to say I'm not in retirement, but I don't do the face-to-face work. I don't do the direct work much anymore. That took me out of that position is because it's a multidisciplinary, funded, engaged project, and it's everything I sat down to do. So we're not looking at your role in this in a singular instance. We're looking at this as who are you working with? This is not going to be one organization. Yes, yeah. There is not help, Christine. I'm not being funny. If anyone is aware of a program that is not decluttering, anyone who's here saying they want help, the support groups are free to attend and open to anyone. So come along, they make change. They're not just there to help people feel better about themselves. People move back into their beds, take space back in their lives. Yeah, so it's not just about saying this is hard to deal with. It's about hopefully helping people forward through a complex issue. Any questions there?
If you could put a link to the support groups in the chat, that would be really helpful.
Okay. What it is, yes, I'll put it in. in a minute, let me just, because I'm going to go back to the slides. If you go to Hoarding UK, I think they're on the front, I think hoardinguk.org, I think they're on the front page, but I promise you I will get you that.
Okay.
It's just with my bandwidth, I'm
All right,
afraid to
perfect.
open
Thank
I'm
you.
afraid to open up the website.
But also,
It's
can I just
very
say that
dense.
obviously, as Megan says, she'll make the slides available, and we'll make sure there's stuff on the Advocacy UK website, Advocacy Project
Perfect.
website for this event, so you're able to access them through our website as well.
Perfect.
And we can get it out to
Teamwork.
more people, which is the important thing. Thank
Teamwork, exactly.
you.
How do
I'll
we
leave you
work
to get on with
better?
it now.
How do we work better together? That's always my aim. I mean that. Like, I'm going to have to, in my roles, potentially raise concerns and highlight where things aren't working. But as a person who's lived in this country for 27 years, I respect greatly what is on the basics of housing, healthcare, social care, mental health services. Yes, we have problems, but it's astounding. I'm seeing a chat. If that chat needs to be addressed, please let me know, Laura. All right, so what we're doing is we're tidying up and we're pretending that everything's okay. But what we know, I've been doing work with hoarding for 20 years, is that it's still not working. That the person becomes more avoidant, we take the stuff away, the trauma is triggered on a more significant level, the behaviors get worse. Yes, so when I talk about this, and I talk about this in the larger constructs as well, we say they, and I say we are a part of this problem. We are not acknowledging that a person starts with a lack of insight. We are saying you don't have insight, so we can't help you. That's not true in addiction. That's not true in other mental health issues where we look at the cycle of change. Yes. In this, we say, well, take the stuff and that will help you. Yes. We create systemically a lot of the problems that we are encountering. And that is certainly something that I'm against. Hoarding UK is not here, though, to protect the hoard. Okay, so we are not saying to the person with hoarding behavior, you have those nasty housing officers. Oh, environmental health is so unfair. We're saying this is a breach of tenancy, a breach of health and safety, a breach of whatever at certain levels, not at all levels. And it's unsafe for you and it's unsafe for others, so we need to deal with this. That is my advocate. Okay, so as an advocate, you cannot offer choices that do not exist. And living in a significant level hoard is not a legal or tenancy option. Okay, so we are working from a mutually understanding and respectful place. We understand you have a difficulty. That difficulty is impacting you as well as others. As such, we have the authority to enforce, but what we are going to do instead is provide support. We use risk assessment as a process builder. So when we are going through our risk assessment processes, which include well-being and psychological risk, physical health, financial risk, when we do these things, we're talking to this person over time and beginning a process of planning how we're going to move forward. I think it is one of the deficiencies in our practice that we go in and start. It doesn't make any sense to me. How would you feel if someone came into your life and made all the assumptions that we're making? These newspapers aren't important, this, that, or the other. Yes, you would not feel good about it. This person does not feel good about it. Okay, so risk assessment is not only a part of a process of ensuring that we are managing risk, but also a part of relational building and building a plan together of how we're going to manage that risk. In a case in the pilot program, there is a person who, when I attended, so I go up physically once a month, I couldn't get into the door. Well, I could, but it was tough. And I said to her, this is terrifying to me. If there's a fire, you're not getting out. 25% of people who die in fires are living in a hoard. The fire doesn't cause the hoard. The person dies as a result of the fire, which happens potentially other places and moves in. So we started at that door. Yes, we said, we got to get that door open and closed. Within, I think it was 11 weeks of meeting a 10-year problem, 10 years, this person is threatened with eviction. The door was accessible and inspected for replacement. The replacement was agreed, And a really positive outcome to me is that she's going to get to pick the color of the door. I love that. So we're not just, if there's anything I need to deal with in the chat, please, Lauren, if you're there, I don't know. Please let me know.
There is a question, Megan, but I wasn't sure. Is it better to wait until after each section and then do the questions and answers? Which would you prefer?
Okay, that's fine. Well, if you think it's relevant now, I'm happy to stop. That's the way I am.
Okay,
So-
it's a question from Liz, just asking, what do you think of Clutterers Anonymous?
I think anything that helps anyone, you know what I mean? I feel like that's an addiction model. So it's based on a 12-step program. From what I understand, the 12-step program has helped people through addiction and other codependency, Narcotics Anonymous, adult children, ACOA, so I think it can be a helpful model. It is not our model. Does that make sense? But I'm not against it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I've invited people to just pop questions in the chat if they want to, and then I'll make sure I'll draw your attention if you missed them for any reason.
Great.
Thanks.
So part of what you'll get in your handout, and just remind me, is our sort of lower scale risk assessment form. And oops, at least it tells me. Am I back? It tells me I'm unstable. Great. I can just talk forever. So you'll have these tools. The assessment tool will come to you as a Word document so you can adapt it. The clutter image rating is a PDF tool that has the 9 stages of hoarding so that we can say this person's on a level 6. As such, we are doing that. Yes. So it's systemic. As much as I really do respect that policies and protocols and processes and legislative frameworks have changed to look at hoarding behavior, what they don't do is acknowledge that there's nothing after the sort of last box, which says refer. So we make a safeguarding alert, which is a part of the CARE Act. We make that safeguarding alert. Safeguarding has nowhere to go, except largely in my experience, to decluttering services, who are wonderful people who care deeply, but are not working on psychological change. Okay, so we're in the other layers of discriminatory practice, we have double the number of people with OCD and no psychological pathways for hoarding. Until we can make this better, and it's not rocket science, you're here with me, you understand that I'm not some grand intellectual. I am some activist who has a way of sort of saying, this is how it's working. That's why I'm doing this pilot. So that at our next conference, we can say, look at what's worked. Okay, this is how it works. But we keep going around the reeking. We keep trying for the shortcut. 10 to 50,000 pounds is the average spend for a hoarding case, with none of that given in support. Yes. We want to contextualize risk assessment. Obviously, children, animals, these things, we are not waiting. We are not. We are working with a family right now, though, where the child has been kept with the parent through a process. Now, whether that's the final outcome or not, we cannot determine. In other instances, the children have been temporarily removed and the parent provided support. Okay, so we're not just sort of saying, oh, you're sleeping in a chair, we have to put you into care. We are saying sleeping in a chair is not ideal, but it's not a huge risk. In the case that I'm working with in our first assessments, I said, I noticed that you're sitting and there's a light. There's a light bulb. How is that plugged in, please? Oh, only 2 of the sockets in the house are working. How is that plugged in? Is there an extension lead on an extension lead on an extension lead? Because that I want to change right away. No, this was a long, singular, sturdy extension lead with not a lot plugged into it. So we don't just say, oh, she has no electricity, or she has electricity, but it's dangerous. We have to ask, okay, if a person doesn't have the ability to manage their self-care in their home, but is managing it in other ways, we have to take that into consideration. In Blackburn, where we developed one of our support groups, the people who commissioned the program worked with local gyms to get people who are in self-neglect and or hoarding a card that allows them access into the service, not to use the facilities, but to keep themselves clean and to maintain their hygiene. Absolutely brilliant. Person-centered. On the clutter image rating across London, the fire brigade says a level 5 or above is a hoard. So at that point, we may need to disclose to, well, I do want you to disclose to the fire brigade. I'll talk to you a little bit about how we do that with or without consent. But if it's not a level 5 and there's 300 aerosol cans, we need to deal with that in a similar way, because those aerosol cans neatly placed are still a substantial risk. And if we have a person who's in self-neglect, so self-neglect / hoarding recognized in the CARE Act as a potential social care need, if we have a person who's in self-neglect and they're squalor, we're not going to wait till it's a level 5, because that impacts at lower levels. I've said this, we need to be working in a risk-informed way that balances lowering that risk and well-being. That is what the CARE Act says. We need to prevent crisis, but we cannot do things arbitrarily as if they have no impact on the human that we are serving. I also babble on incessantly about the fact that too many people who are providing support in whatever context are putting themselves at risk. So people should not be going into a hoarded situation unless there's an assessment that says that they can. That is a part of our process. Senior member of the team and the person who's going to be providing support attend on that first session. Okay. If you are dealing with hoarding, it needs to be in your team meetings, not the whole team meeting. We say 15 minutes, one person. So you're sharing information, looking at resources. You know what? I had that problem with my last client, and I talked to Mohammed and he took care of the whole thing. It was absolutely brilliant. I'll give you Mohammed's email after the meeting and we'll move forward. So we start to connect the pieces within our local authority. I have said that for me, all hoarding is trauma related. A consultant psychiatrist would not agree with me. But that trauma impacts us. So if we have one-to-one supervision, our well-being needs to be considered. And on this slide, I have a picture of the baby P case, the historic one. And the reason I put that there is because the social worker and the director of services both lost their jobs as a result of the child dying at the hands of their parents. Both filed for unfair dismissal. The head of services got compensation. The social worker lost her career, despite the Daily Mail thinking it's, in inverted commas, overloaded to have 18 child protection cases. So as long as we're not managing this systemically, we're putting ourselves and our professions at risk, as well as our well-being. Okay, so it's a holistic view of this. It's not one aspect of it that needs to be considered, but all aspects. Great. I told you I don't like to, I could talk forever, but I don't like to. Risk. Any questions about that? You'll have the clutter image rating of the bedroom, bathroom, lounge room, and kitchen. And he's flashing, but I don't know if you want to talk. Okay. All right. Just like to check in. As I could say, I could talk for Britain. Okay, so now I'm going to sort of just talk in an overview way of about what we're talking about here. So this is a pictorial representation of the pieces of legislation. The Fire Safety Act of 2021 is missing from this. I obviously took it from an old slide when I created this, that we're dealing with in terms of hoarding. So we have to have an understanding of how these pieces of legislation work together. The CARE Act being the primary piece of legislation that took all those other pieces of legislation within it, but also created the understanding for hoarding as a potential social care need. These are the representative organizations which may be involved in our work. If we are working alone in hoarding, we are not working effectively. What the CARE Act says is that we want to empower people to reach their potential. Anything that significantly negatively impacts a person's well-being is something that we need to work with them to realize their aims in a person-centered way. While I'm saying we have to work together, the way we are working together now looks a bit like this. So we have all these different services, all telling the person who hoards, and I only use hoarder because it's a small enough word to fit in the box. We generally use person with hoarding behavior, working not together. So this person showing up saying to do that, this other person saying to do this, the pressures from environmental health being given more pertinence than the social care needs. We need to work together in that MDT way. Yes, so we need to be talking to each other. The images that you'll see are from the Islington Hoarding Protocol, which I was a part of developing, but I don't recommend you read if it's still in its original way, because it's like 98 pages long. Does anyone here have time to read 98 pages worth of policy? A hoarding policy. So I'm working with a housing organization now. We're just delivering training, but I'm also working with them to develop a protocol for what their role is in hoarding. Okay. We don't know what everyone's role is in hoarding. We don't need to look at mental capacity. We need to say, does the person who hoards have the mental capacity to make decisions about maintaining a safe and habitable environment? How do we all have to assess capacity? How do we as housing professionals assess that? Yes. How do we as housing professionals engage with people who hoard? What is our role in a multidisciplinary service? But we do this not because we're trying to ruin your life. In fact, our aim and our goal is about you and your well-being. And our commitment is to provide something that we know will work for you. It's going to be holistic. The space is impacted. A hoard is a visual representation of trauma. I am a person who has lived experience of complex trauma in my developmental years. I see hoarding looking exactly the way I felt. So we're not just looking at that. We're looking at capacity. We're looking at mental health. We're looking at social care needs, financial needs, other needs. Yes. We are trying to work within legal frameworks. I don't have the time today to show you how many ways we're not. We're not meeting our legal requirements. We're also not using the law effectively to enforce people into support. We're only using legislation to penalize and intervene. If we had clear, cost-effective, person-centered programs, we would have a pathway. And I'm going to suggest the first one of those is a support group. They make a difference. If the protocol looks like this, burn it. This is from the Islington Protocol. It looks like it goes in a circle. If it looks like it goes in a circle, it's going in a circle. The boxes at the bottom don't help you to know what to do. That's largely because there's nothing out there. And that's the thing we all need to address. We work in a step-up model. The first thing we want to do is assume that someone has capacity and assume that they want our help. Yes? If not, we work in a way to use the risk assessment to create a relationship, to create a plan together. She said after me delivering training, in the break, said, oh, this woman never does what she says when I tell her to do. And I said, why don't you next time ask her what she thinks she might want to do? Okay? You're going to get a better outcome. This is the conceptual model as envisaged by Frost and Steckity, which says there are behavioral aspects, practical aspects, psychological aspects, skills deficits, organizing, categorizing, planning, deciding, and thinking distortion. It's going to grow in value. It was 3 for 1 at the pound shop and £1.29 at WH Smith. These things that we all have are present here. So we're going to use this holistic system of engagement to assess and plan. We know that what we got to say first is not going to work. I mean, in the meeting, I had a meeting yesterday. We had a plan. I said, how's that going? She said, it's not working. I said, that's great. That's great. We don't just leave it there. What do you think might work? And we adapted the plan. Now that might not work, but what we want is something that's going to work for her when I'm not there in this capacity. She is the co-facilitator of the support groups that are being set up in that local authority. So I'm unlikely to lose contact. We need to monitor and measure throughout. Okay, so Hammersmith and Fulham social care team largely developed the form that I will give you. That's why their name is there. That was 15 years ago. But I'm saying that we need to be looking at this. So a positive outcome in the case where we're dealing with child protection was the mother managing her self-care within 4 sessions. Like the stuff hadn't gone down. But that's a huge outcome. It's a huge outcome. We want to be realistic. We can go from a level 9 to a level 3 in a week. We know it doesn't work. We are not challenging ourselves, and we need to. For you, it needs to be time managed, it needs to be cost effective, and you need to be supported. Okay, so we do not have the money to keep throwing £50,000 at this with no outcomes. What if we invested? I'm not selling our program. I'm always talking about it, so I want you to know what to do. But our program costs under £3,000, billable only in arrears, only for what we deliver. That's not even the cost of the lowest cost clean I've heard of. Do you know what I mean? Like, so how are we spending the money? I wanted to develop a program that I could show was cost effective, person-centered, time managed for us and for them. Keeping it smart, we want to get to the end, but if we start at the end, we're going to go backwards. So we need to have steps, process, measurable, attainable. The more a person succeeds, the more likely they are to keep going. If we set ourselves and people up to fail, we will fail. And we work with people over the course of a year. That is our commitment. We keep them with the same person. That is our commitment. Yes, so we're not doing the whole chop and change. I give you info at, if you need me directly, it's just my spelling of my name with @hoardinguk.org. I always recommend you go to info at because there's more people and just little old maid. And I'm just like I thought last night of something I just totally haven't addressed. I thought, oh my God, I haven't answered that email. So you want to go to info at, but if you need me, come to me. I also want to tell you that I host something called Chairing Positive Change. It is a monthly meeting. It is for professionals to manage casework. So if you're having a complex case, come to the free Chairing Positive Change meeting, and we'll help to develop a plan. That will be through some of the things I might throw your way, but also through other people who attend the group who say, well, in my local authority, we did it this way. So it's a collaborative support model that helps people to move forward, because I know we can get stuck in this. All right. I mean, I think we're good. We got 15 minutes for questions, and we've had some questions. So
thank you so much. Yeah, there was one from Liz actually.
okay.
What the difference between clutter and hoarding is, in your opinion?
I'm going to go systemic. So for me, when it moves to level 5 or above, that is practically where it would become hoarding. Hoarding is a human behavior. So when we had the pandemic, we also saw people profiteering. I'm not going there. But the thing is, you saw human beings hoard toilet roll, but hoard. Do you understand? Because of the crisis. So like the behavior itself, those people would potentially not then stay in that behavior. Do you understand? Like, so they bring in the 9 packages of toilet roll, but then use them. But you see the hoarding in human beings. It's only anything only becomes disorder when it's impacting the person's ability to live their life. Everyone else has everything else. We all are sort of on the OCD spectrum. We are all, we all understand depression. Many of us have had traumas. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just when it impacts that life that it becomes the D of disorder.
I find that so interesting, Megan, the bit about the toilet roll. I hadn't really thought about it before, but actually it's realizing it's something that's there, and it's when it impacts on your daily life.
Everything under the sun is I think it's one of the reasons we deal with mental health so badly. Sorry. And I know we're doing the best we can. I'm putting in the support groups, which would include the virtual support groups, but also have national support groups. We see that people can go beyond where our own dysfunction is, and I think that's a bit scaring to us. Do you know what I mean? So in hoarding, we go in, we want to tidy it up because it upsets us. I viscerally feel it, and we have to sort of say, that's my stuff. I need it to be tidy. What is it about this person that they need? Yes. We have an advocacy service that does not, I have so little time today. So there is statutory advocacy in the CARE Act, which is never in place for anyone who calls us. We have an advocacy service that works to get people into that. So if people are in the eye of the storm, which does not make the services bad, but it can be overwhelming for people who are dealing with it, do contact Hoarding UK in order to get support, to get local support, because that's not often on offer.
Thank you, Megan. There's a couple of questions in the chat, I think, for you.
Okay. What processes? Well, I'm going to say that we pin our work we underpin our work with motivational interviewing. Okay, so anyone in any capacity who's working with anyone, in my view, should have motivational interviewing training. It's a very helpful tool that helps you to support people better because it looks at your part in the process. So everything we do is underpinned with motivational interviewing. We work in a truly person-centered way. So I told you we have a child protection case that we are working with both the child and the parent. Things have gone very well in some areas, but of course, in relation to the parental concerns, they're not going as well as they might want. We will not coerce or force her. We will not do that, and we will not consider that a failure. If things start to move in a direction in which things are not going the way she wanted or we hoped for, we do not drop out. We ensure her rights are protected. You know what I mean? Like, so we are there through a process regardless of the outcome. Largely, the program is successful. In this case, the trauma is so complex. I mean,
thank you, Megan.
I work in a hospice.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I'm looking at that. Yeah. No, I know. So in that, yes, in the hospice situation or hospital discharge, okay. One of the things that can be effective is to try to work with the person to create that microenvironment quickly. That may not mean that things are going out. Okay, so we say, we understand you have hoarding behavior. If we start to say to you, this needs to go, that needs to go, we're going to be making you worse. But what we do need to do is get you home. So can we move things into, if the person has means, into storage? Remember, well-being is as important as anything else. Yes, this person's last wishes in hospice. Yes. So it's like, what can we do to get that space back for you, whether it makes sense to us or not? If you can afford storage space, we will have it moved into storage. Yes. That is, and then it will have to be dealt with, post passing. If the family is there, it is not their decision. And I know how difficult it is. About 6 years into my work, my father became a person who hoards. Okay. My father is in hospice. I had to deal with 33,000 books in a studio apartment. Very nice books, not hoarded. They were on shelves. But I'm saying, like, I know as a family what it's like to deal with that. It's horrible. But I still feel like it was my father's decision until those moments that we had to take control. And then we did the best we could. 1/3 donated, 1/3 sold, 1/3 discarded, unfortunately. Yeah, so we need to do what we can. I guess I feel like people go to the end again. Let's just get them back into that space in as safe and habitable way as possible. What do they need to have access to? Where can we move the things? In the case that I'm working on, in one of the cases that I'm working on in the pilot project, we're having the backyard, which is terribly overgrown. It looks beautiful, but terribly overgrown, cleared in the environmental health process. And then we're going to put a container in there because this person is totally able at this point to move things, does not get in distress. Let go of 90+ papers in the last session of support, but we're not getting there fast enough. I don't want another winter with no electricity, no heat, damp, mold, infestation, there's fleas. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we've got to make decisions that are short-term and long-term thinking. I hope that's helpful. Yes, I agree. I know the impact that I really want to do a family group. I really want to do a family support group. I'm just afraid I just don't think I have the capacity at this time, but please watch the space because my mother had trauma, which impacted her mental health. Her mental health impacted me and resulted in my trauma. That is the generational trauma transfer that we all experience. When growing up in a hoard, you're afraid of the doorbell. You know what I mean? You're afraid. You have to hide it. And I believe that the child feels that the parent loves the stuff more than they love them, which is not the case. The parent has a very complex mental health issue. So I understand the difficulties. I was not raised in a hoard, but I've worked with a lot of children of people who hoard. Thank you, Mackland. I don't like the them and us. I just think we need to stop that. I'm healthy and you're not. My next life. Oh, I know, Nat. I know. Please come to a support group. They're wonderful. It's such a wonderful environment. I mean it. Advice, information. Yes. So the first support group I ever set up was at LD, learning difficulty. No, the outcomes were astoundingly positive. I'm going to put LD and autism and dementia. We wouldn't work in our plan with a dementia, but looking at those things as impairments of mind versus psychological difficulties. And what I want, like it's not like depression, although the person can have depression. So in those, we want to, like, I'm going to say, we were less, you can hear me babble on, I'll be metaphorical. I would be less metaphorical. I still would be person-centered. Would be simpler in my discussions. So the slides that I did for that support group did not have all the words that you just saw, but all those words were expressed. And in that group, let's say we had a group of about 15. That was the first support group I ever felt set up. Only 2 did not change forever. One of them was so severely impacted by learning difficulties that they couldn't do it. And that was a learning for me. And the other was going into early onset dementia, which also meant that their ability to learn was impacted. In a third case in that group, the support is still ongoing for their hoarding behavior. They were not able to change, but they're more engaged in a process that needs to be maintained. I don't consider that a bad outcome because they're not in distress all the time. I know. Just love him. Just love him. Just, be the best you can. I have to say, I've never in my 20 years of working with people who hoard met a bad parent, but I've met parents who have a very complex difficulty, but never a bad parent. But the impact on that relationship is so significant and severe. You're kind of inspiring me to sort of think I'll look at setting up the group. I'm just so overstretched at the minute, but I also am looking at having the time today to do this and then not going into 16 other meetings, which is nice. So maybe I'll look at doing that today. How about that? I like outcomes.
Megan, I just wanted to say thank you very much. We're sort of drawing to a close. There's time if anyone's got a couple of last thoughts or messages before I hand over to Donna. But also to say that if anybody wants to email me with questions, I'm sure that Megan would be happy for me to forward those on, and I'll kind of share any information that Megan shares with me as well. So there's looks like
yes, that's a really good question. I'm sorry I only have an hour, and this is one of the most complex things I will talk about today. So the general data, this question is about consent. The General Data Protection Regulation says we must seek consent for decisions, people overlook that, and information sharing. It says, though, if it is necessary and proportionate, we have a duty to disclose. So if I'm saying to you, regardless of whether the person consents or not, at a level 5, I want you to say to this person, it is our policy that at a level 5, we let the fire brigade know. Do you consent? If they say no, we go back to our policy, which says we will review with our line manager, make a decision whether it's necessary and proportionate, and then go back to that person. We have decided that in line with our processes and policy, we will disclose without consent. Do you consent? No. We do not then become a part of a barrage against this person. We set up a model where they are helped and supported through that assessment. The fire brigade is going to help reduce risk. That's all their role is. I would say the same process for safeguarding. Okay. So if we need to raise the safeguarding, protect ourselves, to protect our organization, and to try to get this person into a process of support, we may need to do that without consent. We would in the referral explain it is necessary and proportionate. Decision has been made in line with your policies as a result of it being a level 7 hoard, including self-neglect. I saw the question about learning difficulties in autism. Have people join our groups if they're willing to do those things virtually. I'm working with an organization now, the same organization that I trained with. They're looking to expand the program. So, if there are learning difficulty services that are specific, training can be helpful to help implement that system and how we're going to work. Oh, I know. I wish I had more time. There's never enough time in hoarding, I have to say. That's why I'm saying 15 minutes only in the meetings.
Right, thank you.
Hi, Natasha.
Thank you very much, Megan. I can see we're starting to get a little bit of drop off as we come up to 11.
Good.
So we'll just do some final closing remarks.
Perfect.
And we've had over 50 people on the whole of the event today. So first of all, thank you to all of you in the audience for staying for the whole hour. Particularly a thank you to those of you who shared your own personal experiences. It's never an easy thing to do, but it does help other people immeasurably when you're able to do that. I also wanted to say thank you to Laura from the Advocacy Project, because Laura pretty much single-handedly has set this up and run it, and it's been a brilliant event. Do look out for other Advocacy Project events like this. We hold them regularly, and you can find information on our website and on our and on our socials. I'm also really pleased to see a number of the Advocacy Project staff on this event today. And obviously what we've all learned today will feed into our own advocacy work going forward. The slides will be made available on our website for people, so do look out for them. And obviously, finally, the biggest thank you of all goes to Megan, not just for the information given us today, but for all the brilliant work that you've done over many years. This is a poorly understood issue. I know a lot of us on the call have experienced it either directly or indirectly, and it's been such a joy to hear your enthusiasm and your passion and your commitment. And I know that everybody who's been on this call today will take what we've learned today away and actually put it into practice in our own practice with the people that we work with. So thank you so much to you for all of that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Perfect time. We got through.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.